ease of use, it's low cost, and it's accessible to everybody. It makes sense to keep it around for people who aren't high tech and have disposable income to pay for the content that they're looking for. There's a market for all the other stuff, and there's nothing to take away from that, but AM still serves a huge portion of the public, and I think it's probably worthwhile to keep it around.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that note, I think we're going to take our first break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about why AM is so important. We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Insights into Tomorrow. We're talking about AM radio and the value of it in today's modern world. So in this segment, we're going to talk about why AM radio is so important. Like I said at the top of the show, I am a producer at an AM radio station, so you can take that however you want. They're not paying me to say this, though. They're barely paying me to work. So some members of the right-leaning media, such as Sean Hannity, suggest the phasing out of AM could be a conspiracy to silence conservative voices. And boy, does that sound like a narrative we've heard before. Many right-leaning talk shows that are the key to the Republican base live on AM. That's very, very true. A lot of the shows that I run are like that. And they are just more popular than a lot of the other shows we get because they have that built-in audience, essentially. Why would... We have a note in here about Elon Musk. Isn't Elon Musk emerging as a leader of the right? Why would Tesla be participating in this conspiracy? That's a good point. Elon clearly is on the right side when it comes to the political spectrum. Back to the EV vehicles wanting to get rid of AM radio. Why would he be doing that if it's a constant echo chamber for right-leaning ideas? I don't know. That's a good question. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't. It makes me go back to the thought that it's a cost savings thing, but I don't know how you're saving money on it by other than making sure that other medium, he owns Twitter too. So maybe it's a way of trying to make sure that the mediums that he favors more are at the forefront, removing. And I don't want to get into conspiracy theories here, but one of the things that right-leaning side of the country seems to think is that if they eliminate options for people and the only options that you have left to adopt are the options that they want you to adopt, then you obviously wind up following their indoctrination.
Right.
Is this a factor of that? I doubt it. I think that's kind of a stretch, but I think it's more of a technology thing. Like, I don't even know what kind of radio a Tesla has at this point in time because it's a computer interface that it has.
Yeah, I have no idea. But I could see Elon being more of the mind of, there's a ton of right-wing stuff on like YouTube and their own sites that are getting plenty of traffic. And I could see Elon being completely fine with just moving past AM entirely to focus more on that digital side of things. Guys like I'm not even going to mention their names, but you know who they are, the guys that are, on that side of the spectrum that are online doing their shows. They're basically doing an AM talk radio show just on the internet, and they're getting way more eyes on than they would ever get on AM. So I could see Elon just being of the mindset that AM is dead and we'll just move on from it.
Well, and let's be honest, the format that we do on this show here is very well suited, with the exception of the video, obviously, but it's very well suited to being on an AM radio station. Which is why I say, the most popular podcasts that are out there today are really an AM podcast or an AM talk show that happens to be on the internet. So there isn't a lack of demand for what AM offers from a format standpoint. Is it just a technology thing?
I mean, yeah. Once again, we go back to this issue of technology. Jordan Walton, executive director of the New Jersey Broadcasters Association, tells us, due to the nature of the sound, AM lends itself to the spoken word, which is why the talk shows gravitate toward it, which is true. When I'm producing shows, we are very aware that we are spoken word when it comes to things like compression rate and what we're uploading our shows at. It really doesn't matter that much because when it's processed through the transmitter, it's going to sound like it sounds on AM no matter what we do to it. Hundreds of foreign language stations on the platform serve marginalized communities, which is also very true. I run a lot of shows dealing with Eastern European communities in the area, Ukrainian people, Polish people, and that was an aspect of the radio industry that I had no idea about before I started this job, and it's really opened my eyes to it, how important it is to these communities to have that access. I mean, holding full-on religious services that through the AM dial that they might not be able to get to otherwise. It's a big deal, and it's in those communities. It is still very active, and of course, nearly 47 million Americans listen to AM, which is a lot of people. And if that just happened to go away, that's 47 million people that just lose access to that platform.
Yeah, and I go back to when I was a kid. You know, my grandmother lived with us. She was from, as my mother used to term it, the old country. She was from Lithuania. And she didn't speak English very well, didn't understand English very well. So she was very self-conscious going out in public because she couldn't communicate. There happened to be at the time a radio station, a local AM radio station that she would listen to that was done, I don't know if it was done in Lithuanian, but it was done in a language that she understood. Mm-hmm. And that was like her connection to the outside world. She would get religious services through it. She would get news through it. It was a friendly voice that she didn't hear unless she was talking to members of her own community. And that level of cultural sensitivity, I think, is very important to maintain for those marginalized people.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the shows that we run are entirely in other languages, entirely in Polish or entirely in Ukrainian. And, you know, I don't speak those languages, but somebody's listening because otherwise they wouldn't be on the air.
Right. So, and as with everything, cost is still a factor. You know, as a platform, AM's comparatively inexpensive, certainly to produce and create content for. AM's also the great equalizer across drastically divergent economic situations. From a millionaire to a Porsche, from a millionaire in a Porsche to a homeless person with a battery radio, anyone can tune in, is the quote that I found.
And that's kind of what I talked about earlier, the accessibility of it. There's no subscription fee. As long as you have a way to receive the transmission, because they're all around you. You know, you can't see them, obviously, but, you know, FM signals and AM signals are all around you. As long as you've got a way to...
You can't see them. I can see them.
I think you got to see a doctor. As long as you've got a way to receive that, you can access it. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
You're absolutely right. And again, talking about your friend who's in and other people, you know, you've got farmers and seniors and immigrants who all rely on it because it's a cheap cost of entry into getting into these areas. You don't need any high-tech gear. You don't need any advanced knowledge of computers. You literally flip a button, turn it on, turn the knob to where you want to go, and it's there. Accessibility makes it appealing to a lot of people. Probably the most significant reason AM is important, again, we touched on severe weather alerts, Amber alerts, and other emergency broadcasts all go out over AM frequencies. Now, a lot of those of emergencies, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, the technology required to make the internet work and you know, with the internet. The fact that it works as well as it does is a miracle. There are so many points of failure that can stop the internet. It's literally the first thing to go down. Mm. FEMA has spent decades building out its integrated public alert warning system, or its AM-based stations. So you've got a huge infrastructure for emergency broadcasting that's already been invested by the country to build this out, and it works. I think that's my biggest catch is are falling, literally falling down within driving distance of us here. This works. The technology is sufficient enough to do the job that it's doing, and there's no reason not to use it for AM to go away. The fact that it's an old technology shouldn't be a reason. The wheel is an old technology, and that's not going away because it's thousands.
It was invented, I think, in the early 1900s, but like it still works, especially when it comes to things like this. Why would you get rid of it? And what is the alternative? Really, like, is there a plan from these automakers? Really, it's not their problem if AM radios are done away with. What the alternative would be for these kind of emergency broadcasts?
No, it's not. And their solution to this is use an app. And I'm sorry, but there isn't an app for the emergency broadcasting system. There isn't an app that works when the internet goes down or your cellular connection goes down. The technology of the internet, and it's ironic because when the concept of the internet came out after Sputnik launched, the idea was to move away from circuit switched telephone networks that could be taken out in a nuclear strike to a packet switch network, which can route around outages on the network. So the whole premise of the internet was to have a redundant system of communication that didn't go down during emergencies. And the first thing that goes down in times of emergencies is your local internet connection. Mm-hmm. Like it happens every time. You know, we have gusty storms here and our cable internet goes out or the power goes out. And it's like there's so many things that an internet connection is dependent on that if any one of those goes down, whether it's your power at your house, your router, the wire to your house, the wire on the street, the wire back to the central office, there's so many things that could go out that would take down your internet. And if you think about the technology for AM, what do you have? You have the radio station and their antenna. Mm-hmm. They're the only two things that you need. And you could set up